This episode of Gather and Go is sponsored by Coastal Mississippi. Play Coastal Mississippi. 62 miles of shoreline, outdoor adventures, casinos, fishing, and fantastic food. Perfect for fun-filled itineraries. Visit coastalmississippi.com and go have some fun for fun's sake.
All right, everybody. My guest today is an avid traveler on a mission to help people improve their mental health through intentional travel experiences. After beginning his career in banking, he left the financial services industry at age 30 and joined Mashare, a certified B Corporation that designs and manufactures branded products for tourism and other industries. He's now one of 4 owners of the company and is the driving force behind its Switch Off, Take Off initiative. Patrick Marsden, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. What an intro, Brian. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm so glad to have you here. You and I have known each other for a few years. I had the privilege of hearing you speak at a conference a while ago, and we have kept in touch. I would love for you to tell a little bit more of your story of how you found your way into travel, or sort of a travel adjacent industry, because a lot of people in your demographic, at your age, would look at a financial services job and say, hey, that's a pretty plum career. Why would I ever leave? So why did you leave?
I worked with absolutely amazing people at the firm that I was at, which I left when I was 30. And they were the reason I stayed there for as long as I did. The reason I left, I was just terribly bored. And it just wasn't for me. And I could see how it would be for lots and lots of people, but it wasn't a career that I woke up and clapped my hands and sprung out of bed and thought, gosh, I can't wait to go to work today. I was really passionate about. So decided to make the decision to pursue a career in an industry that focused on travel, or in a company that focused on travel, because I love this industry. I think we, as an industry, do such an important job in helping people discover and appreciate other cultures, and that does so much for not only the people who travel themselves, but also for the cultures and the societies that our travelers visit.
Yeah, absolutely. So were there some experiences that were formative for you, kind of in that vein, something that really opened your eyes or enriched your life, that made you say, hey, I want to see if there is a career potential in the travel space?
Yeah, certainly. I think in my childhood, my father was a British diplomat, so we lived in Turkey for a while. We lived in India for a while. We were constantly on the move, constantly traveling and experiencing different parts of those countries. And that embedded within me a lifelong I think curiosity about what's out there and how other people live and how they think and how they deal with whatever problems it is whatever problems are going on in their respective societies. And so, yes, I mean, it was a lifelong itch from childhood to be on the road, and to be a teenager growing up in India was a gift. We have the train lines of India at my disposal, albeit third class, no air conditioning tickets, the cheapest I could find, to trundle up to the Himalayas or down to Rajasthan or wherever it was a gift. And I think incredibly formative in what it is that I do now and what other people to experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So somewhere along the way of making that transition, getting involved in travel, you started noticing that mental health was a growing issue among our generation. You're right there, kind of at the beginning of the millennial generation. Tell us about when you had that realization and what kind of motivated you to say, I may be able to move the needle on this a little bit.
Yes, well, look, I think I'm one of the 20% of people who have experienced mental health issues in some shape or form. Mine were incredibly light, so just a little bit of anxiety, and I think it gave me a huge appreciation for the burden that a lot of people live with from a mental health perspective on a day-to-day basis. And upon reading into it further, when you look at data points around just how severely impacted our mental health is compared to previous generations, and starting to look at the causes for that, then it seemed to me there was a natural place within the travel industry to provide an oasis of calm particularly from social media, from digital connectivity, from smartphone use. We need to disconnect far more than we are right now. I think future generations will look back on our use of social media and digital devices with horror. And we are in this sort of unchecked, unregulated period of free for all. And the travel industry has an opportunity to say to their guests, hey, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if you put your phone down for a few days or a couple of weeks, you're going to feel a lot better about your life afterwards. And you're going to have deep thinking time to really think about what's important to you. We distract ourselves constantly with our devices, and we don't really do proper thinking anymore. And so to have some designated time away from them, I think, is a very powerful thing that the industry can provide to our guests.
Yeah, boy, that's a big vision, and that's a heavy lift for a lot of people. I want to talk more about that in a few minutes. To kind of set the stage for that conversation, I wonder if you would kind of comment on, this phenomenon in society where a lot of people look at travel as a very liberating experience, something that is going to improve their mental well-being. Does reality match up with that expectation, or is the way we're traveling pretty broken right now? Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. I think there are so many people that understand the sort of false dichotomy, the false comparisons of social media, who say, I know I'm seeing a curated version of that influencer's life. I'm not seeing their bad hair days and their screaming toddlers and all the things that I experience, and yet I'm so attracted to uh, the vision of travel that they're presenting, if they're a travel influencer, or even if they're, some other personality who you're following their trip online. Uh, what does a real authentic trip look like when you're in the midst of it? Whether you're on your own or you're with your toddlers or you're with a group, and how much of it is fair to expect to be beautiful and Instagrammable versus how much is not that, but is something rewarding in its own right?
I mean, great question, Brian. I think an authentic trip is going to differ wildly by person. I suppose what makes travel truly authentic is not trying to project your expectations for what it should be onto the reality of what's in front of you. Are
Hmm.
you able to really enjoy the moment that you are in and experience the fact that you thought that this trip was going to be something, but it's actually something very different? And do you welcome that, and do you enjoy the idea that you don't know what's coming, and you're not perhaps in control of what the situation is, and that you're not eating what the influencer was eating, but instead you're having a meal with two backpackers you just met or whatever, and they're brand new people, and it's exciting and engaging, and you're genuinely relaxed and excited to see what this place brings to you and what you can discover in it. That feels quite authentic versus running through a checklist of the things you need to be photographed in front of to make it seem like you're having the trip of your life, to put on a facade as to what this place was to you because that's what TripAdvisor told you it should be. And losing that sense of being lost and wandering, and not using Google Maps, but asking someone for directions and going down an alley into a little bar and sitting with someone who you would never have spoken to otherwise, and getting recommendations from them, and wandering off into the great dark night and finding all sorts of wonderful things, versus the kind of curated digital experience that we've been led to believe is what we should be not only enjoying ourselves, but also creating for those people that follow us on social media.
Yeah. So speak to that person who says, okay, I understand what you're saying, but I'm about to drop $10,000 on this trip. Or if I'm taking my extended family, as you mentioned, it could be, well into 5 figures, even 6 figures. Is it natural for that person to want to have a level of control over that trip because of the investment they feel they have made in it? And if so, how do you kind of coach them into letting go and still seeing the value of the investment, even if it's not what they pictured it working out to be?
Oh, of course, because that for them, that's what they want. Is they want to be, they want the maybe in their day-to-day life, the stress of logistics. As a father of two, my wife and I, 80% of our conversations are logistics for children, and have those taken away for a while sounds incredibly alluring. And there's a great white paper when we look at group travel that shows the stress levels of group travelers are lower pre-trip, lower on-trip, and lower post-trip, because they don't have to worry about, oh, have I done all the stuff? Have I got the right rooms and all the rest of it? There's no sense of organization. So I would say to that traveler, that sounds fantastic if that's what you want. And that's what many people want, and that's great. And that's the great joy of group travel. If you're doing that trip for any other reason than to escape and to be looked after, then I'd be very interested to hear what those reasons are. But no, I think that's a wonderful way to use travel. And I know, working with a lot of those companies, they go to great efforts on the ground to create as genuine an experience as possible for those travelers who are coming into whichever country they're going into. So the groundwork's been done. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So say you are going on one of those group trips, or you have a friend who's going on a group trip. If you were to make a pitch to them, say, hey, your tour operator is going to take great care of you. You're not going to have to worry about navigating a whole lot. I want to encourage you to stuff your phone in the bottom of your carry-on and not look at it for 7 days.
Yeah.
How do you make that case? Because I imagine you're going to get a lot of people looking at you with, wide-eyed disbelief, right?
Yeah. Yes, certainly. And we are all, including myself, addicted to our phone. So it's a big ask. I would say to them, I would perhaps recount to them this interesting study done by a jewelry company who offer jewelry to help you disconnect, where they took a group of these sort of kind of millennial influencers out into the desert of Morocco. And for the first few days, they had their phones, and then they took their phones away and they watched. And there were a couple of, I believe, neurologists embedded with them, kind of observing. And what they saw was an improvement in posture, which actually is, I'm hunched over, I should think. No longer hunched over devices in their phones. They saw better sleep pretty much immediately. All that blue light flooding into them late at night, doom scrolling in bed and what have you. But I think more interestingly, they saw much better interconnection because when you don't have your phones and you are debating something and you can't just Google the answer and you have to work it out, for example, that becomes quite a lively conversation. The sort of conversations we used to have back, and we'd have to go check in like the Encyclopedia Britannica, and we'd have to look it up,
Right.
like, days later after a heated debate over something. And also small things like remembering their aunt's name who lives in Poughkeepsie. Those are the small things that build relationships. When you're in a kind of flippant conversation because you're scrolling on your phone and you're not really paying attention, the quality of those interpersonal relationships is much lower. And so they emerged from the desert with much stronger interpersonal connection. They were better rested. I don't have the data about their stress levels, but I imagine it was lower. But what was really interesting in the conversations they had with these guys afterwards is that they actually had some time for some deep thinking. They had some time to sit back without just being distracted by their phone and to think about what it was they were doing with their lives. Are they happy? Are they enjoying their careers? Are they handling their relationships well? All these things that we used to think about. When I was getting the bus to school, I'd stare out a kind of rainy window for half an hour. Now I'd be on my phone being distracted by some insignificant nonsense, or maybe getting stressed out by work email, whatever it is. We have robbed ourselves and our brains of that time to think, and deep thinking time for those of us that force ourselves to have it is really valuable, especially if you're a business owner, you're running a business, you're a parent, to gain that perspective and gain that sense of self. So that's what I tell my friend is, do you want to come out the other side of this trip with all of the benefits of group travel and having gone off and see these things and meet all these people? And then do you want to add a really, really healthy layer for you? And I promise you, after you've put your phone away for a day, it just becomes a brick in the bottom of your bag. And you will not think about it anymore. And you will not realize how much you check it until you don't have it. And so that is what I would say to them. I would say, I'm never going to force you to do it. But if you do, God, you're going to be thrilled you have.
Yeah. All right. So I can just imagine some of the pushback now. But Patrick, my boarding pass is on my phone, and Uber is on my phone, and that's how I'm getting from the airport to the hotel. And Google Maps is on my phone, and my alarm clock is on my phone, and my phone is my camera. My phone is my everything. So how do I still have a travel experience where I can take pictures and I'm on time for things and I can get around and I feel safe? How do I do that when all those things in my mind are so linked to this device?
Yeah, it feels scary, doesn't it? And I think that's the scariest thing, is that you feel so vulnerable without this digital device attached to you. And I think that's the gift that especially group travel can give you, is realizing that actually life without it isn't that scary. You know what? If you've got a credit card and some cash, you remember the name of your hotel, then you're going to get home. If you don't have any money or a credit card and you can remember the name of your hotel, you're going to get home. You're going to be okay. And you know what? Go get lost. That's probably going to be the best bit of your travel story in hindsight, is when things go wrong, where you're lost in something, you're stuck in the rain somewhere. That's what you'll laugh about with your friends later, even though it feels a bit dire in the moment. So I would encourage them to lean into that feeling of being scared, of feeling vulnerable, of saying, but, I need all these things. You can print a boarding pass. You can buy a disposable camera. They're back. They're all the rage now. You can go get photos developed. Remember how fun that was, having to wait what photos you took? You can ask the hotel to give you a wake-up call. There are ways to function without a smartphone. And you've still got it in your back pocket. There's an absolute emergency. You've got it in your bag. Everyone's always like, well, what if something goes wrong? It's like, they'll find you. Okay, you're worried about this, then tell them the hotels you're staying at. And you know what? When you come home, there'll be a message waiting for you. And how often have you received a phone call that needs that urgent attention immediately? And the answer nearly always is never. And so why would it be different?
You're exactly right. I've been traveling for 20 years now in a professional capacity, longer than that as a student. And I can't bring to mind one single time where there has been a life or death phone call or text message. Now, I'm very blessed in that, right? I mean, God forbid that ever does happen where it's truly life or death. But in 20 years, there hasn't been something that couldn't wait a few days.
Right.
Uh, and that's probably true for nearly everybody, nearly all the time.
I would say so. Yeah. And look, there's always going to be exceptions, and people, if you want to um, create a reason why you shouldn't put your phone away for a while, you're going to. The question is how do I feel about being addicted to this device? And how will I feel if I don't have it on me for a while? And I think a curious mind would want to try it out.
Yeah. Okay, so many of our listeners are deeply involved in group travel. They own tour companies or they lead trips, they're guides, they're group leaders. What kind of responsibility do you think people in that sector of the industry have to sort of help shepherd their customers or encourage or nudge their customers into these more meaningful experiences, and maybe sort of tucking the phone away as part of that? What responsibility do we bear?
Look, I have the great opportunity to work with these men and women on a daily basis, and I know, and it's why I love working in the travel industry. Is it's just packed full of really good people who genuinely care about travel. Yeah, I can't say the same for other industries I've worked in, but travel people are good people. Our product, some sustainability issues aside, is really good. We're not selling cigarettes, guys. We're selling
Right.
meaningful experiences. We're helping people see the world, understand different cultures, which in itself breaks down prejudice so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And our industry is really good. If we can fix some sustainability issues, it will be amazing.
Yeah.
So I don't think they have any moral responsibility to do this, but I think that they know that their job is to provide the best experience possible. And I know that by encouraging guests to disconnect from their devices, they will have a better experience and it will be more meaningful. Now, I'm also not naive enough to know that there needs to be a business case, right? The guests have to want this. And I think the tide is now changing. I've been talking about this for a long time. I think the awareness of the deleterious nature of social media, particularly on teenagers, particularly teenage girls, is out there. I mean, Instagram's own research talked about it. Social media issues are, I think, certainly much clearer to the average person. I think the impact of constant smartphone usage is getting there. I don't think we realize quite how much of an impact it has on our brain. And so I think there is going to be more of a groundswell amongst their customers being interested in having the option. Let me put it. And so I would never suggest forcing it, because that's how you get pushback. But I would suggest saying, hey, if you want to have a digital disconnect experience, which, by the way, here are the benefits that you'll likely experience, then we can provide the infrastructure for you to do that. And I think particularly for the luxury guys, that provides a huge benefit to the customer experience, particularly as we work in the wellness industry as well. Wellness and luxury go hand in hand these days. And so people are very conscious about their physical and mental health. So for travel providers to be saying proactively, hey, our products can be really great for your mental health if you disconnect for a bit. And we're going to do all these bits and pieces. Here's a disposable camera. The hotel will wake you up. Here's a paper map. When was the last time you got to play with one of those? That's so fun. To be walking around with the compass, or just go ask for directions. Here's how you ask for directions in Italian or Spanish or whatever it is. Go get lost for a bit, and you're free afternoon. Then I would expect the response to be very positive. And if someone doesn't want to do it, fine.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, as a travel company, you are maybe encouraging people to post for social media and to scan QR codes for surveys and things like that. So you've got to find that balance as a brand as to what's right for you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can remember when I first started in group travel, 2003, 2004, the industry was still very much shaped around the preferences of the World War II generation. And of course, they have not been the driving force for a while now, but they were all about value. all about inclusions. They wanted the most bang for their buck. That's just who they were as a generation. And so one of the things that developed was that the traditional group tour itinerary was very busy because tour operators were trying to get in as many museum visits and natural wonders and included meals, and it was all sold based on the volume of stuff you're going to get to do on this trip. Uh, does that mindset create some problems for people who are looking for a more restorative or recharging trip? And are there some things that the industry could look at shifting in order to help facilitate those mental wellness refreshes?
I mean, I think the industry has changed quite a lot since then. I mean, based off of my understanding of itineraries amongst my clients in particular, um, and there's, I mean, a huge amount of focus on post-trip surveys and how the guests felt the itinerary was put together and the order of events. So I think that they're ahead of the kind of pack it in and sprint through Europe, kind of 9 cities in 3 days sort of.
Right.
And I do think that certain tour operators really are looking at the pacing and prioritizing the wellness, the health and wellness aspects of passengers, particularly in things like food choices and the various other ways you can approach that. But on the other hand, you do certainly, as someone who spends a lot of time reading about travel, this idea of slow travel and slowing down and seeing less a little bit more thoroughly is certainly resonating. And as I now have 2 kids under the age of 4, it very much resonates with me. I don't want to be packing up car seats every day. It's you settle down in one place and you really enjoy it, and you settle in. And I'm not a group traveler at the moment because of children, but I think that will change in the future. So I think I don't know. I mean, you spend a lot of time in this industry as well, Brian, but I think it's moved on from the pack it all in, sprint through itineraries. But I'm sure there are examples that can prove me wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. There has been movement forward. I also think there's just inertia in business because so many tour operators are small business people. They're solopreneurs in many cases, or I bought my mother out of this business or whatever, and she had this system and she had this way of doing things, and I am just still running the same system she's running because it worked, and I'm just trying to make ends meet. I'm trying to get everything done, and so I'm wondering if there are a few concepts or thoughts that we can just kind of put out there for people to say, hey, if you slow down a little bit, if you give people one free morning a trip, if you create a spa experience. For years, group tours would never go to a spa, or a wellness retreat. If we just give people a few little things they could maybe think about for a minute, it could inspire some change. I think there's an appetite for change, but the knowing how to do it can be difficult when you're running 1,000 miles an hour.
Of course, yeah. So on this topic, we always look at the travel experience on my business's side through the lens of social psychology. So there's a couple of amazing social psychologists called Gilovich and Kumar who've written extensively on why is it that purchasing experiences makes us so much happier than purchasing material items, and why is it that experiential consumption continues to far outperform on those happiness metrics over and over and over again. And so there's some wonderful reading, and I can send you some white papers, Brian, to maybe link in the podcast.
Absolutely.
And the crux of the matter is that experiences create reward forever. And so we go off, we have a lovely trip. That gives us, what they term as social capital. So with something to talk about with friends, it's a shared experience. If you have been to Madagascar and you bump into someone else who's been to Madagascar, that's a conversation that you can have very easily. He draws a comparison. If you buy a Camry and you bump into someone who's just bought a BMW, then physical things are compared very quickly. It's, oh wow, yours is nicer than mine. So it's not a conversation that's probably, isn't it great owning a car? It goes down to the various specifics of the brand, etc.
Mm.
Whereas a trip to Madagascar, you will likely talk about, oh, wasn't that place beautiful? Or this is where I stayed, and the food and the dishes and blah blah blah. It's much more positive comparison, whereas physical items tend to be much more negative comparison.
Mm.
And so. One of the other papers in this field of study is an interesting study by some Dutch researchers who looked at our stress levels pre-trip, on-trip, and post-trip. And what they found was that, we enjoy pretty much half of our enjoyment of travel is pre-trip. That's when once we've booked and we're looking forward, it's anticipation, it's looking forward to it. The trip itself is a tiny segment in time. It's about 15% of our stress reduction or our happiness increase, if you can make that leap. And then post-trip is about 35%. So 85% of the enjoyment we're garnering from travel is occurring outside of the trip window itself. So to bring this back to your question, what I would say to those tour operators is, look, excuse me, 85% of your customers' happiness is occurring pre and post-trip. So as we look at health and wellness, let's really lean into that. Anticipating this amazing trip on the pre-trip side of things. How do you help whip up that sense of excitement about the trip that's coming? How do you get them feeling positive about all the great things they're doing? Can you tell them the number one novel written in the country that they're going to? Can you send them a playlist of the top 20 songs from the last decade so that they can start to get into all those little touches to whip up that pre-trip anticipation period is what we think about in our business on a constant basis. And so leaning into the wellness angle of that, it's saying, certainly messaging, hey, by the way, if you do disconnect, you're going to get some pretty positive benefits. Hey, and maybe you want to start kind of doing that on the micro level now. For example, so talc, we created these for talc. It's a little sleeping bag. You can see the sleeping bag lining that you put your cell phone into. So with some copy attached saying, hey, you know what? Why don't you just take a night off from your phone? Just put it to bed. You can let it charge in there. Just let it rest. Come and hang out. Just be you and just be present. So just giving those kind of micro steps of, I'm not saying you got to put it away for 2 weeks. Go put it away for a while, see how you feel. And then maybe try a little bit longer. And then certainly on post-trip, those are the touches you can do pre-trip. And then on-trip, it depends how much you control. Do you have a tour director that can control certain elements? Is it semi-independent travel? And then post-trip, it's, do you remember how good you felt when you were looking forward to a trip, or when you were on a trip, or when you were just back from a trip? And how can you kind of pull forward that positive mental attribution into life? Because I think there are, all of us have had a trip where we come back feeling genuinely refreshed and reframed and refocused and thinking, God, I should feel like this all the time. Why do I let the little stuff get to me? Why am I stressed all the time? Why have I lived like that? And then you just slowly ease right back into where you were before. So it's a big question. So I don't have answers, but hopefully that's a good starting point.
Yeah, that's super helpful. So the sleeping bag, the phone sleeping bag you showed us, is part of a whole product line that you've put together under the Switch Off Take Off umbrella. Tell us what you're shooting for with that product line. Give us some examples of the different types of things that people can get and how it helps them achieve those better mental health outcomes on their trips.
Yes, I think the issue with smartphone usage is that a lot of it is reflex. So if you go into your phone, and it will tell you this, and see how many times a day you check it, it's probably about the mid 200s. You're probably checking your phone 230, 250 times a day, which everyone says absolute nonsense. And then they check for themselves and they're horrified. And the reason we check it so much is because normally it's right there on the table in front of us, or it's in our pocket. And again, going back to the deep thinking time, we've got a free moment. We don't want to really just let our brains kind of idle and operate, because maybe that's unproductive or some nonsense like that. So we'll check our phone. So the Switch Off Takeoff product line that we created is designed to put a physical barrier between you and your phone to get rid of the unconscious checking and make sure you're just consciously checking your phone. Because when you get rid of the unconscious checking, then that number drops dramatically. So it could be something as simple as we designed a very thick rubber band that's the width of your phone. There's a pain in the ass to get off, right? And deliberate. You've got to really, wrestle this thing off your phone, because that you're making the very conscious choice. Okay, I need to check this. I've got to check my email, whatever it is that you need to do on your phone. And so we've designed this range of products designed for travel to help you stop accidentally becoming digitally engaged when you really don't need to be. When you look at the amount of times you check your phone and the amount of times you need to check your phone, there's a huge disparity there. And so what's interesting is when you put your phone into one of these devices, whether it's a giant rubber band or a cell phone sleeping bag or a bag with 8 Velcro straps that are really noisy, so you have to consciously undo all of them to get your phone out, or something with a combination lock, whatever it is you realize, oh, actually, I don't need to be doing this. And in the beginning, it's frustrating because you're missing that hit, that dopamine hit that these devices give us. But then that goes away fairly quickly, probably an afternoon or a day or so. And you realize, I'm liberated. I'm free. I don't need this thing. I have it as a tool, but it doesn't have me anymore. And that's a wonderful feeling when you get there. And then you go off and you sit by the pool and you read a paper book and you eavesdrop and you talk to your person, whoever you're with, and you are present, you're there, and you just notice the difference pretty quickly. And so I can't evangelize enough about this. It makes travel so much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for people that want to see the products, learn more about Macher, or maybe follow you, what is the best way for them to do those things?
Learn more about Macher, macher.com, Macher. Learn more about those products. It's switchofftakeoff.com, switchofftakeoff.com. And then follow me LinkedIn. LinkedIn's the only social media I have, for I think obvious reasons based off of this conversation.
Sure.
And so it's kind of a necessary tool in the business world. So I'll keep that for now, but the day I retire, it's gone.
Yeah. Well, we're going to link to all of those resources. So hopefully people will avail themselves of those and check that all out. Before we let you go, we have a few questions we ask everybody, and these are just for fun. So no pressure. When you travel, are you going to book a window seat or an aisle seat?
Aisle.
Yeah. Why is that?
A freedom of movement.
I'm with you. Yeah. I don't want to be trapped.
The deplaning pause where I kind of hunched over under the airplane thing in a window seat waiting for my 2 seatmates to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that. What's something in your carry-on that you wouldn't travel without?
In my carry-on, I wouldn't travel without. Great question. Kindle. Kindle's got me through a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going back into paper books, like you mentioned. I've been reading in paper for about a year now, and it's just so good.
Oh, it's great.
Just so good.
Where paper kills me is weight. And then also I need the light on my side of the bed, and my wife goes to bed before I do. So I'm jammed in Kindle for now.
Yeah. Well, it's better than nothing for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So if you had a free airline pass in a week with nothing else to do, where would you be headed next? And since you have young kids, I'm going to give you a family pass for a week.
Family pass with kids for a week. A week is not too long, is it? Let's see. I would probably take them down to Baja, California, one of the most beautiful parts of the world. Yeah. Fly down there, drive back to LA, up the Baja Peninsula.
Yeah, stunning. All right, last question. What's something you have seen or done on the road that you wish you could go back and experience again with somebody you love?
I went back to India with my 2 best friends in 2011, and we drove a rickshaw across the width of India. So it was about 5,000 kilometers. And one of the best trips of my life. I'd do that again in a heartbeat for sure. That was one of life's great experiences. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. It's always fascinating, the answers I get. You are the first person to say, I want to do the rickshaw trip again.
It was great fun. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Patrick, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. I appreciate it.
Brian, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us for this interview. I want to let you know that conversations like this are just part of what you will hear if you tune into a full episode of the Gather and Go podcast. When you listen, you'll get travel news you may not hear anywhere else, along with some really helpful road tips, some smart analysis, and maybe even a hot take from me about issues that are impacting travel right now. Now, you can hear this full episode along with many others by searching for Gather and Go in your favorite podcast player, or you can click on the link right below this video or one of the videos right here to my side. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.